Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy all, Red O'Loughlin here. Today we're on The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And my guest today is a 7-time author. She has one children's book and an interesting story about how she got into writing and the series that she's in. And so I want to go ahead and bring up Beth Splaine. Please join us.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I was looking at your research, and we didn't go into it backstage, but one of the things I found fascinating was you said you were brushing your teeth one day, and then all of a sudden you became a writer. So why don't you tell us how brushing your teeth becomes an author's journey?
Yes, it was an interesting story that I still can't believe happened. We lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was brushing my teeth, and I closed my eyes and finished brushing my teeth. And while I was doing that, the toothpaste cap fell on the floor. And with my eyes still closed, I reached down to get it, and I couldn't find it. And I remember thinking, still with my eyes closed, it would be really challenging to be blind and not be able to do a lot of the things that we take for granted, like picking up a toothpaste cap. And I opened my eyes, picked up the cap, stood up, and looked in the mirror, and the name Julian Stryker popped in my head. And very quickly, all of the other details about Julian, what he looked like, the clothes he was wearing. He was a child psychologist based in Boston. He had lost his sight because one of his adolescent clients attacked him with a knife. And he had chosen the path of forgiveness and kindness after a long road to recovery. So with all of that in my head, I went downstairs, and I had never written anything longer than I had to at school or an article. And I literally sat down at the computer and started typing. And about 6 hours later, my husband came home from work. I was teaching voice at home at the time. 6 hours later, he came back, and I was still at the computer, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know. I think I'm writing a novel." And that was my first book, which still sits in a drawer in a desk tucked away, that will eventually be rewritten. Very quickly after that, within the next year and a half, I had written 2 sequels to that first book called Blind Order and Blind Knowledge. And then I kind of went in a different direction, and I heard about 2 real life medical stories. I was in healthcare for 10 years before I switched careers. And I heard about 2 real life medical stories that I wove together to create a book called Devil's Grace. And it actually won a national competition to get published. And that's how I started getting published by publishers, regular publishers, as opposed to being self-published.
Okay, so you recently won an award. Why don't you tell us about that one?
So my most recent book, Pleasure to Purpose, the true story of sex worker Scarlett Pereira, came out in early January. And I had asked that Literary Titan review it. They reviewed it and gave it a beautiful review with 4 stars. And because it got 4 stars, it was automatically entered into their contest. And I literally thought nothing of it because I'm not a very lucky person in terms of winning things. So, and then about 12 days later, I got an email saying that I had won the Silver Award, the Literary Titan Silver Award. So that was a huge win. The book's only been out for a month, so I was thrilled about that. I'm very, very honored.
Okay, so it's the true story, but it's not necessarily about the sex worker. It's how she helped others. Is that correct?
It's actually her story. And how I came to meet her is interesting. But before I get into that, assuming you want to know about that, it is her story. It's about 5 months out of her life. She does what she does, though. Primarily, she spends most of her money on saving hospice horses, horses who are otherwise, they're dying usually when she gets them. And she takes care of these horses like they're her children. And she is one of the most empathetic, compassionate, kind people I've ever met. And go ahead. Were you going to ask something?
Okay, when we were talking backstage about hospice horses, I
Yeah.
had a slightly different understanding of who she was saving because whether it's a dog or some other animal, and I'm at least aware of horses being a hospice opportunity for the dying, and I
Yes.
thought she was providing the horse to the hospice
Patient.
patient. I was
Yeah.
thinking client. I can't think what's the
It's
right word.
okay. It's okay. Happens to me all the time.
And so, okay, so these are horses that have been involved in hospice over time,
Yeah.
and they are in their last days or whatever. And so she is nourishing them and treating them and with kindness and everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I was just on the phone with Scarlett, that's her name, this morning. And I said, "How are you?" And she goes, "Well, I'm pretty good, but my horse." And she was telling me all about her most recent horse. And so, I'm thinking about her and the horse now. But she doesn't have any children, human children, but these horses and her animals are her babies. So, yeah. Hmm.
Okay, well, let's jump back into your first book that's in your drawer that you wrote the sequel to.
Yeah.
How? Okay, you wrote for 6 hours. Obviously, you wrote a little bit after that,
Yeah.
and you decided the book was never published.
No, not yet. It will
Okay,
be.
so this is going to be a prequel to the books that are already published.
Yes.
Okay, so you've
Yeah.
already written the prequel or most of it.
Yes.
Now you have the next one and the next one. How long did the second book actually take to write? Now that you already knew the character and what was going on.
I think I write first drafts usually very, very quickly, maybe 4 to 6 months. I just kind of go bleh on the paper or on the screen. And then it's always the second, third, fourth, fifth drafts that take more time. But from starting the book to its publication was probably 13, 14 months.
Okay.
I treat my writing, even though it's mostly unpaid, right? Except for royalties, it's a job. And I think a lot of writers struggle with that. I'm fortunate that I teach primarily in the afternoon, sometimes into the evenings. I teach voice. So I have a lot of my mornings free, and that's when I devote time to writing or marketing. So
So the afternoons are filled with do re mi fa si la ti do whatever.
nice. Yes, exactly. Right here. Got it. I'm sitting at my piano.
So let's talk about your voice for a little bit because I think there's a little bit of a combination because when you're singing, there's music, there's interpretation, there's a lot of things going on in the brain at the same time, and you also have a similar way when you're writing. You have that location, the clothes. I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities. So tell us how you fit into that similarity between your vocal life and your writing life.
Well, that's a very astute observation, in my opinion, because I tend to write from the inside out as opposed to having something influence me from the outside. I tend to have something hit me from the inside out. And that's also the way I perform. So when I was writing, because I did perform for 15 years, in my mind, the scene I was writing was a set, and whether it was on a stage or a sound stage or whatever, but I knew what was on the side tables, the bed tables. I knew what book was sitting there. I knew what slippers they were wearing, except it wasn't until I was writing Blind Order, which was the sequel to the one that hasn't been published, that um, there was a scene where he's sitting in a restaurant and a woman comes in to meet him. And I switched perspectives. So she was looking at him, and I realized that I had described him sort of in my head, but not with detail. Like, what did his nose look like? So I really actually stopped and thought, wow, that's interesting. And I think it's because it was coming from inside of me. It wasn't some character I had built, it was part of me. And so I got to literally chisel him. I sculpted him in that moment, and it was actually really fun. And I took a lot of time with it because I could see this going to screen one day, and I can see the character. I see the actor I want to play him. I probably won't have any say in it if it gets there, but I know what he looks like, and so that was kind of fun.
Have you done any songwriting at all?
Not seriously. No. I mean, I used to write songs for my kids when they were little, or, I make up songs all the time and I'm singing all the time, but I'm much better at taking that aria that's written in the, 18th century and bringing that to life than I am. That's a different skill set that I am not fortunate enough to possess, I think.
Yeah, we had a guest on very recently who was a Grammy nominee for this last set of awards, and we talked
Wow.
about the songwriting and the lyrics, and especially when you start translating that into a foreign language, it just everything goes crazy. But as an author, it's a different world than what the other. So
Although
you have your go
Although,
ahead.
can I just add to that? You raise a really good point. And one of the reasons I stopped performing is because I realized I was tired of interpreting someone else's work. My job was to look at music that was written in the 17 or 18, 19, whatever, and to interpret it. But there are so many ways it can be interpreted, but they've all been done, especially with opera. So I remember feeling frustrated that I wasn't creating something. I was creating a character when I played Carmen or Delilah, but it had all been done. And so this idea, I didn't realize it at the time, but when I sat down and started writing, it was that need to create that permeates now to today. I didn't realize I had that need. I satisfied it for a while with performing, but it grew. It was in there and it was trying to get out. And that's what writing is. Writing is creating worlds that didn't exist before you put your fingers to the keyboard. And that's really exciting to me.
Well, let me ask you a personal question. When you're doing
Mhm.
an opera and you're singing, how do you get your voice or your lungs so full of air that you can not only sing but sing for a long time? That's always intrigued me. How did you develop your ability to do that?
Um, Opera often doesn't use microphones. If there are mics, they're taped to the base of the stage at the lip. And so it's really imperative that you have an ability to project. And power really comes from not your chords. Your chords are simply the vehicle over which the air passes, right, to create sound. Power comes from lower down in the barrel. I call this area like the entire midsection of the barrel. So when we breathe, we start at the bottom and we fill all the way up to at the top of the rib cage. Up here should not move. We don't need to lift up there. A good singing breath does not do this. A good singing breath is that, and you did not see this move, hopefully. So, and once you take your great breath, trained singing is not about how you use your air, it's how you conserve your air. So it's in the conservation of air and the actual action of kind of pushing out with your ribs and your muscles in your midsection that keeps the support solid so that your sound, as it travels hopefully effortlessly over the chords, can then resonate in your head and in your chest cavities. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that a lot.
Sure.
I remember the movie The Right Stuff. They had the astronauts here from the Mercury 7 program, and they were blowing and keep something equal. And one of them wanted to break the record. They just went right past whatever the record was, and he quit. And then all of a sudden, you hear bubbles coming from somewhere else, from somebody else. That's continuing.
Exactly. It's fun. Actually, there's an exercise, the hissing exercise, that if you can hiss out for 20 seconds, basically consistently, that's like a good thing. So it's not quite that simple, but it kind of is. So anyway.
But oxygen is such an important part of our bodies. It's amazing how many of us do not know how to breathe properly, and then as we get older, our ability to breathe becomes less and less, and it actually becomes a contributing factor as we get really late into our lives. But let's get back to our writing and everything else because
That's okay.
we have a blind thriller, and then I also know you write a little bit on some World War II stuff. Is that true?
Yeah. So when I wrote the medical thriller that won the contest, I already had in my head. In fact, while I was in the contest, which lasted a couple days, I wrote the first chapter of a book called Swan that ended up being called Swan Song. And it's a story about an opera singer who rises to fame in Nazi Germany and becomes the obsession of Adolf Hitler, who was a huge opera fan. She doesn't know it, but she discovers she's a quarter Jewish, which puts her on Hitler's radar. But she's become a real diva in Berlin. She falls in love with Hitler's real life nephew, William Hitler, whose kids still live on Long Island, and they had 4 boys, 1 died. So the 3 sons of Adolf Hitler's grandnephew still live on Long Island. And so she falls in love with him. They get engaged and they decide to go back to England where Willie Hitler grew up. Adolf is very, very jealous. And so he ends up kidnapping Ursula, the opera singer, and sends her to the artistic, quote unquote, artistic concentration camp. Willie ends up going to England and then traveling all over the world to find her. So the first half of the book is her rise to fame and Hitler becoming obsessed with her and her getting engaged to his grandnephew. And then the second half of the book is Willie searching the world for Ursula. And spoiler alert, he finds her. But in what condition? Now you got to read the book. So that was that book. Yes.
Interesting. You're pulling in the character of a singer into your books, so you're using singing and writing.
Yes.
Uh, and you had a momentary point in time dropping a toothpaste cap that left you blind for a few seconds. Uh, I can see 3 or 4 books down the road, you're going to have something else that's wild and crazy out there.
Yeah, it's funny how life imitates art imitates life. There's a reason that saying is a thing. Um, because the Second World War II book is called Steel Butterflies. And there it is on the left. And a friend of our family's was 16 years old, real person. Her real name is Solange Baumann, and she was 16 years old when the Nazis invaded Paris and they took over her parents' house right outside of Paris. She and her parents moved into the servants' quarters and she was required to cook and clean for them, even singing at night, playing piano and singing in the salon with some of the officers. So she ended up during that time becoming an officer with the precursor of the CIA. She ended up becoming did I say an officer? A spy. She ended up becoming a spy in the CIA. And she actually knew Wild Bill Donovan, who was the founder of that organization pre-CIA during World War II. And so she carried secrets. So she started, as she aged, she was telling the family some of these stories. So I started taking notes, and that ended up being Steel Butterflies. I wrote the book without her permission because she was so scared that someone was still going to come and kill her when she was 97 years old. There was a man apparently in her town who knew her past and would kill her if he knew who she was. And at 97, this was still such a real fear for her. She was literally on her deathbed. And I said, "Can I read you something I wrote?" And I read her one of the chapters. And she smiled and she said, "Oh, that is so beautiful." She had a very French accent even at 97. So I ended up coming back a couple times. The last time I came back, she had turned 98. And I asked her if I had her permission to publish the book. And she granted me permission. And she died 3 days later. So this book about a 97-year-old World War II operative befriending a biracial 15-year-old girl. They're 82 years apart in age. What could they possibly have in common? But they have many things in common. So it's really about their friendship and the secrets and stories that are revealed in that friendship. So that's that World War II story.
Beth, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Okay, great.
Meet Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, President, Founder, and Chief Listening Officer of USA Global TV and Radio. She is a certified life, career, and executive coach. Dr. Jacqueline is the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Behind the Green Screen and Adversity to Awesome. As the listening mentor, she teaches children and their families how to listen at an elevated level through the book series titled The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, the Listening Mentor. The Creative Hearts Awakening book series features heart-centric creatives who share their awakening journey. Through the Power of Listening educational course platform, people can get certified as elevated listeners on USA Global TV and Radio. Learn how to center yourself and align with nature through the power of nature, plants, and shrines. The Journey of Chakra Psychology course will educate you on the chakras and their meaning. The Intuition of the Heart course will help you understand how to trust your intuition. Learn how to face the shadows of self and understand the impact of following trends and materialism. Set boundaries and ask for permission to help establish better relationships, deeper connections, and more authentic conversations. Take your communication expertise to a higher level with the course for curious humans. After all, we are not robots. Looking to start your own podcast platform? Get everything you need in the Podcaster Pro package with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. How can music, breath, and your voice set you free? Find out with the Power of Listening courses. Dr. Jacqueline is a certified meditation teacher, yoga instructor, and Juice Plus distributor. She will help you create a plan for your healthy lifestyle. As an expert in the art of interviewing with over 3,000 hosted and/or produced live broadcasts, Dr. Kerbeck helps her clients stand out as global broadcasters. Dr. Kerbeck's books are available on Amazon. Start your listening journey by reading. Tune into the Listening Mentor TV show, Fridays on USA Global TV, and learn how listening can be your superpower. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, MBA, DBA, Certified Holistic Life, Career, and Executive Coach, Certified Yoga Sculpt Teacher, Certified Meditation Teacher, The Listening Mentor, Singer-Songwriter, Founder, President, Chief Listening Officer of USA Global TV and Radio. drjacqueline.com. Thank you to all our elevated listeners, team members, animal characters, and co-authors. Contact us at 215-852-9406. Jacqueline at drjacqueline.com.
Howdy, Red Laughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. We have our guest today is Beth Splaine, and okay, back to normal now. Anyway, Beth, please join us back here on the Wise Ones today. A couple things not related to writing, but to your background a little bit. You had a Great Dane. Do you still have a Great Dane?
No, he passed. We actually had 2 Great Danes and an English Mastiff all at the same time, Tank, Hannibine, and Moose. Yeah.
What was the last one?
Moose.
Moose?
He was the big Great Dane, yeah.
My first dog, Cocker Spaniel, was named Moose.
Oh, that was my mom's nickname in college.
Well, I have a sister.
She was this big.
I had a sister named Spider, but that's another journey
awesome.
down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had temporary custody for a short while of a Mastiff, 184 pounds or something. So
Yeah, that
I,
was
I, share,
Tank.
I share some of your joy there.
Mm.
But another one I wanted to talk about very briefly was you had a water heater explosion that disrupted your life for a while.
Yeah. Well, how do you know that? Was that in a article or
It's
something?
in one of the things that I do my research for the
Oh,
people coming up.
you're
Uh,
good. Yeah.
and because we had a water heater explosion next door that the house burned down,
Oh
and
my goodness.
nobody was in it, nobody got hurt.
My
And I
goodness.
actually had my house rented at the time. I was living in New Orleans, but I get this call saying your house burned down. I said, "Oh, okay." And by the time I finally got around to our management person who was taking care of things, no, it wasn't your house; it was one next to you. And then when we found out, and it set their foundation for a couple of years, but you had a couple of weeks of inconvenience or longer. But I just thought that was interesting because it's something that was very near and dear to our home. I guess it was next door.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. We had it's funny what yucky stuff leads to good stuff all the time. And we had just moved into this beautiful house in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I was vacuuming the dining room floor and there was water on the floor and I was like, that's weird. And then something dripped and I looked up and the ceiling was really, really dripping. And I was like, we were there like 4 days. So I ran upstairs and it was just the whole thing was just coming apart. And so I ended up calling whatever, a plumber, and they came out and they said, oh, well, it's more complicated than this. We have to rebuild, blah, blah, blah. We had 14 family members coming in from the East Coast to stay with us for a week or two. So, I mean, it just was very stressful. We had just moved in, I still had boxes. And I would always go to the piano when I was stressed, I would go to the piano and just noodle around or pull out a book or something. And the head plumber, they were at our house for like 2.5 or 3 weeks. And the head plumber is the one who came to me and he said, I know you're stressed because you're playing the piano. And I looked at him and he said, I figured that out about you. Well, he and I ended up becoming friends. And like for the years that we lived there, he would just come over and bring me donuts just to say hi because he was a nice guy. I mean, and so the most wonderful things come from the yucky things. So that's my water heater story. Yeah.
Okay. Um, it's interesting how those things evolve over time
Yeah.
because, but we all handle stress differently, and
Yeah.
that's actually going to be the topic of my next show immediately following this one is stress and what can we do? What would I do?
It's a
But
good
anyway,
one.
getting back to your journey as an author, uh, you didn't publish the first book. Did you get it edited at all, or was the first editing journey the second book?
First editing journey was the second book. And the next two books in that series were self-published. One was through Amazon, which was great, Create Space. The second one was through I can't remember. I'm blanking on the name, which is probably good because it was not a great experience. But the editing with the Amazon was actually great. I don't know how it is now because I haven't done it since 2017. But it was great, really great, actually.
Okay, so you get the books edited, and they took you say a little over a year to write. That includes the editing time too.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
From time of fingers to keyboard to getting them out. Now, I wrote Swan Song in 4 months, and it's my longest book, but it just poured out of me. And that's how I know a book is close to my heart. Devil's Grace poured out of me. Swan Song poured out of me. Steel Butterflies, not so much because it was someone else's story. So for the last 2 books, I've written someone else's story. It's not my story. I make it mine, but it's not mine. And that is a different animal altogether. And when I met Scarlett Pereira, who's the prostitute in Pleasure to Purpose, I met her because my massage therapist also massages horses. And she was massaging Scarlett's horse, the one who's in the book. And my massage therapist friend said, hey, I never asked you, Scarlett, what do you do for a living? And she said, well, I normally tell people I'm a massage therapist. And so she told her what she did. She said, I am a prostitute, I'm a sex worker, I'm a dominatrix. So my massage therapist tells me this. I'm face down on the massage table, and she tells me this, and I said, get out of here. And she said, no, it's true. And I said, I have to meet her. And then immediately after I said it, I thought, what are you thinking? Why do you have to meet this person? And then I realized it was because the compassion that you need to take care of these horses is amazing. But that same compassion needs to be carried into a BDSM or dominatrix session. This is a world I knew nothing about, and now I know way more than I ever thought I would. But you need to have compassion and trust to do this work, because otherwise, honestly, it's torture. And most people don't enjoy that. So that's why I had to meet her. And I told her that in our first meeting. And she looked at me and she said, "Thank you for acknowledging that, for understanding that." After our first meeting, we sat for 3 hours and we talked at a restaurant. And then I left to go teach. Now, many of my students are children, ages like 8 and up. So I went from talking about all of the sexual stuff with Scarlett for 3 hours into a building where there were orchestras playing and there were little kids running around. And I walked in and I thought, oh, this is where I belong. This is my world. And I went to teach. Several hours later, I forgot, because when I teach, everything else goes away because I love it. As I was walking back to my car, it all came rushing back, and the two worlds colliding literally made me feel sick. I almost vomited. And I got home and I said to my husband, I don't know if I can write her story because of this feeling it created inside me. And he said, then don't. And I had told her I wasn't sure if I would or not. So I decided not to write it, but I didn't want to tell her right away because I was a chicken. So like a month went by and I decided I needed to reach out to her. So I reached out and I said, gee, I'd love to meet your horse, because I wanted to just let her down gently. And I texted her and she called me immediately and said, I had to put Franco down last week and I'm just a mess. And so an hour later, we're still chatting because she was so upset, and I'm not going to hang up the phone. And then the next week we started chatting. So for the last year and a half, every Thursday at 10 a.m., we talk. And I took 35 pages of notes. And about 2 months in, I thought, I think I'm writing this book. So the reason it's important is this book is important is not because I wrote it and not because it's her story, but because it's a chance for people to see and experience something outside of their own worlds that will open their eyes, give them a different perspective than what they normally hear on TV. All sex workers are not drug addicts. All sex workers are not being sex trafficked. So it's just a glimpse into another world. And when I've talked to people about what this book is as I was writing it, to a person, fascinated. The men were more fascinated because it was about a sex worker. The women were more fascinated because they were thinking, oh, well, what would I do in that situation? And so you just gain, that's the point of books, right? To get you outside of your comfort zone, to make you think, well, what if that happened to me? What would I do? How would I handle that? And most importantly, my books are all about darkness to light. We walk through a valley of darkness, and we can't appreciate the light really until we get to the end of that darkness. We know it's there, and when we see it, we say, there it is. And what is light? Compassion, love, forgiveness, kindness, empathy, patience, right? So that's what this sex worker has in spades for her clients, for her family, for her horses. So why should the story not be told? Such an unexpected place to find so much light. That's why I wrote it.
Resilience.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
When did you start marketing your books?
Normally, when I had a publicist for 2 of the books, and we would start about 4 months ahead of time. With this most recent book, Pleasure to Purpose, we didn't have the final advanced reader copy until 10 days before publication date was planned. So I did the best I could. We all did the best we could. But the real marketing is happening now. All of the podcasts and the interviews and the articles, that's all happening now. Ideally, it would happen 4 to 6 months ahead of time.
Okay.
Get the press release out there, all that stuff.
Audiobooks?
2 of my books are on audio, recorded by me because I have the accent that I can do. So the steel butterflies, the front one is like this. Her name is Celeste in the book. And Devil's Grace, I also recorded. I tried to record Swan Song, but I recorded 2 chapters and I was so physically disturbed by doing Hitler's voice. First of all, I had to research Hitler's voice. It's very hard to find video where he's not screaming. So, because he has some real conversations in the book. So that took a while and I tried my best to imitate it with the German accent. Yeah, we do the German. We talk like this all the time when we are doing the German. And but 2 chapters in, I felt physically sick, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this for an entire book. And so, if someone wanted to do it, that would be great. I wasn't going to pay someone to do it when I usually can do it, but it was a small publisher, and they couldn't afford it either. So that one's not on. So the 2 that are on audio right now are Steel Butterflies and Devil's Grace. I'm hoping to get Pleasure to Purpose on audio because there's a lot of juicy stuff in there that could be really interesting. I was like, as I was typing, I was thinking, my mother, God rest her soul. I was like, oh God, my mother. When I wrote Blind Order, there was one sex scene in there, and I was like crazy about it. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to write this. My mother's so embarrassed. And this time, the first draft of Pleasure to Purpose, I had some women read it, and one woman said to me, she doesn't hold back. She goes, okay, Beth, seriously, if you're going to write sex scenes, then write the darn sex scenes. But don't, no one talks about a hoo-ha. No one says that in the real world, in that world. And so I had to get really gritty. And the first scene was really hard. And the first line in the book is, I find it ironic that some whores don't enjoy sex. And when I wrote that, I thought, okay, I'm all in. And so it was a challenge, but one of my he's 94, he survived the Holocaust. He's a huge reader of all my books. And he said to me the other day on a Zoom, he goes, I cannot believe you wrote this book. It's amazing. I love it so much. He's 94 and he's reading this book. And he said, but I can't believe you wrote this. You with all these other books about the light. And I was like, but don't you see? He goes, no, I get it. I just can't believe you wrote this. So
Beth, we're at the end of the show. How do people get your books, or how do they get in touch with you?
the best way is to go to my website, Elizabeth Splaine, like you got some Splaine and Dodo Lucy, elizabethsplaineauthor.com, or you can just Google Elizabeth Splaine. You can buy my book at a discount from Ingram, which is the distributor, if you go to my website. All of my books are available. You can also reach out to me through my website, send me an email. I will always respond. I love to hear from people. And I'm just grateful that you're watching, Red, that you took time.
Well, for our audio audience, elizabethsplaineauthor.com. That's ELIZABETH, Elizabeth Splaine, SPLAINE, author, AUTHOR.com. So Splaine, SPLAINE. So for our audio audience that don't have a chance to see our screen.
Thank you.
With that, Beth, I really appreciate your time today, and I look forward to our next conversation. I really do. And best of luck with Pleasure to Purpose, and I hope that it also has its audiobook down the road too. So take care.
Thank you, Red. I really appreciate your time, and Dr. Jacqueline too. Have a great day.
I shall do my best. Bye now. This concludes our show today on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. We had Beth Splaine on, author, vocal opera singer, vocal coach, a lot of things that we had there. The next show coming up today, back to back on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, is a show that I do by myself called Talking Heads. And I'm doing a series now. Each week I pick a topic and I say, what would I do? Well, I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem, treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. So if I can find chemically what's going on in the body, well, what if you do this? Well, that may speed it up, it may slow it down, it may stop it. But there are things that, with a chemical reaction, we do have the ability to have some kind of interaction with it. And sometimes it's easy to do, and sometimes it's nearly impossible. But at least if you know, you can talk to your doctor and make better decisions. So with that being said, take care of you all. Catch you all next week. Bye now.
Ever dreamed of hosting your own TV show, sharing your story with a global audience? Now's your chance to shine. At USA Global TV and Radio, we make it easy for you to create, host, and broadcast your very own TV show. Whether you're a storyteller, entrepreneur, or industry expert, we help you bring your vision to life. With our exclusive interview, live streaming, and podcasting training, you'll gain the skills and confidence to captivate your audience. Our global platform ensures your voice is heard worldwide. Join our community of creators who are already making an impact, one show at a time. Step into the spotlight. Host your own TV show on USA Global TV and Radio. Book your discovery call today at usaglobaltv.com. Copyright 2025 USA Global TV and Radio. All rights reserved. Terms and conditions apply. To learn more, visit usaglobaltv.com.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Steve Klein Art at steveklein.art.
My name is Steve Klein, born Manchester, England, 1953. My quest in my lifetime is to create artwork from my soul and the deepness within my wildest dreams and fantasies. In 2012, my heart stopped when I was given too much anesthetic for a minor knee operation, and this near-death experience took me to another multidimensional world, an out-of-body experience, and I was given the gift of being blessed by an overwhelming, burning passion to become, for the very first time in my life, an artist with an eternal, passionate desire to bring my art, which I've named multidimensional, subliminal, freeform art, to the world, as only 3% recover from what I experienced, and now in my golden years want to release my cosmic, vital energy through my art to allow people to be a part of my cosmic dance.
To learn more, email roccogoodwine@gmail.com. For VIP pricing, mention USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honored to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/usaglobaltv. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives, one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.